Hi and welcome to my channel again. Today I'm going to teach you a little bit about, first of all, what is the third eye. Okay, I'll explain about what that is, and then I'm going to give you some ideas about how to open the third eye. Now, I'm speaking to you today as a medium, a psychic medium, and I've worked with this all my life, so my take on it may be different to other people's, but it should give you some insight and idea about how to open this mysterious thing that people call the third eye. So I'm going to tell you all about the third eye today, and later on we'll tell you about how to open the third eye. Now, the third eye is considered as the seat of the soul, as René Descartes, the philosopher, said. It's the centre of where the soul resides in the body, and therefore is our vision into the next world, as us mediums and psychics use, and also our means and vision into the spiritual realms generally, and the seat of enlightenment, perhaps some call it. You can find references to it right through Hinduism particularly, which calls it the Ajna Center, and we see it in Taoism and in Buddhism. Taoism from China, and in lots and lots of other references throughout all sorts of other spiritual traditions. You know, even only if thy eye be single, it says in the Bible. You know, there's even references possibly in Christianity to this possibility of this inner sight, this inner vision. Now, it's always been placed as being kind of here, right, in the middle of the forehead, right? Some place it right between the eyebrows, but I would normally suggest that it's right here. This is where the center of the vision is for the third eye. Now, like I say, the Hindus particularly point it here. This is why they put the little red mark there in their forehead. This is the most spiritual point on the human body. It's one of the chakras. You know, now you've heard about the chakras, perhaps, those spiritual centers that run up and down the spine, which don't really have any corresponding organs or anything associated with it as the point where we can say that is the chakra. It's like a part of the spiritual etheric body. But the third eye also seems to have a counterpart in the body, and that many people believe that the third eye is actually what we call the pineal gland, which is right in the middle of the brain. Now, I've got a few notes in front of me so I don't get things wrong completely with this, but if we just look at the pineal gland first of all and what we mean by that. Now, the pineal gland it's set in the, like I say, right in the middle of the brain, and most mammals still retain it. And it's right at the point where the two hemispheres of the brain sort of join together too, as well, which is kind of important for this as well. The only creature that doesn't apparently have it is the hagfish, right? Which I've never heard of hagfish, but apparently they have an equivalent or something like that. So there's been quite a lot of research into this idea that this material. I remember reading in Colin Wilson's books that the material that the pineal gland is made up of is very similar to the sort of material that you actually find in an actual physical eye. Now, this they reckon, this pineal gland right in the center of the brain was a remnant of an actual eye that humans used to actually have. You know, now in some lizards, we have what's called the parietal eye. Right, now this is an eye that's actually on the top of the head in most lizards, so it's there to kind of sense the changes of the seasons. You know, it picks up the polarization of light, so it helps creatures to understand where they are in the year, as it were. And we're not fully sure of what the full function of that is in lizards completely, but certainly lizards have it, and most mammals have an equivalent in the idea that there's a pineal gland in the brain. Now, the teacher, Madame Blavatsky, now she was a Theosopher. She was a funny looking woman actually, but she was quite a strong influence upon spiritual thinking, both within Theosophy and in Spiritualism too. And although they didn't, I don't think the Theosophists completely understood all the stuff that was coming out of India. When they went there, they met people like I met on my journey to India, with Mystic Journey to India. They met the Siddha yogis who were teaching them and giving them ideas about, like the Great White Brotherhood and the teachers on the spirit side of life, and the masters in the Himalayas that live for eternity, and all these things, the mysteries they were digging up. And correctly, I believe, Madame Blavatsky realised that the third eye is actually, this third eye that they were talking about in these mystical traditions is the actual dormant pineal gland in the human being. And so reptiles still had this sort of extra eye that they actually use, but there was even been argued that the humans at an earlier point in our evolution may have actually had an extra eye, but in the back of our head. That's one theory. I don't think there's anything being proven scientifically about that, but that certainly has been part of the arguments that have been put forward about this incredible thing, this third eye. And there was another Theosophist type chap, I think he was involved in Theosophy, which was Ledbetter. He was a very interesting man who was very interested in things like dowsing and things like that as well. But he claimed that in the third eye also that it could be narrowed down to sort of a vision through a tube, and it became like a microscope into the human condition, and that through the third eye you could even look deep into the brain to the very atomic structure of the human makeup. And anybody that has perhaps been involved in the past with the teachings of people like Timothy Leary and things, he often talks about the idea that the consciousness can reach down to the cellular levels, to the atomic and DNA levels, and right down through the pure energy through some inner vision that comes through those methods he was using, as it were. So we have this incredible organ inside our body which we can open and awaken, and is used very much in the teachings not only of the East, but also in the teachings of spiritualism too. So when us mediums work, consciously or unconsciously, we are opening the third eye in the middle of the brain. So although we put the third eye here, in actual fact, if you draw a direct line from the middle of the forehead right to the centre of the brain, that hits exactly on the pineal gland. And that is the incredible third eye that I'm going to talk about next, of how we kind of open this spiritual centre. So let's see how we go about opening the third eye. Now I could talk for hours and hours on this, but I'm going to try to keep this very simple for you, really, because first of all, because I was given a warning from one of the teachers that spoke to me, one of the Siddha yogis that spoke to me through the oracles that I've mentioned about in my books and so forth, the nadis, and it said to me that I would teach people how to open their third eye. But I find it very difficult, because in my case it said my third eye has always been open, so it's always been easy for me to understand these things. And I think some of us are born with that third eye certainly active when we're children, and particularly if you sit as a medium like I've done through my life, it's stimulated and opened the third eye. And then particularly yoga too can have a very strong effect upon the prana energy in the body that helps the third eye to open even further. So for me it feels fairly self-evident, but for some people I think it might be a little bit hard, this idea, and hard to get your head around some of it. So first of all, there are techniques out there that can physically help you to open the third eye, but with all these things we don't want to force anything. We want to do things gently. People suddenly get the idea that suddenly they have this fantastic vision of everything, and your eye opens, because it's, the third eye is a bit like taking a hallucinogenic, because in the third eye is this chemical like DMT that is produced inside the third eye. So they're expecting a sort of full-on experience. But actually, when the third eye opens, it's a gradual process. It's based, in my opinion, through light, because if you think about it, the third eye is it's an eye, so therefore it's going to respond with light. So I want to take you through a simple technique that I'll tell you about in a moment, to use basically a very simple meditation technique to help you to do this. But there are other techniques out there. One of the most, you've probably heard about kundalini yoga, which is often called kriya yoga as well. And some forms of kundalini are very, very forceful and not necessary, and can cause an awful lot of problems for people. So I don't like too forced an attitude. But one of the sort of techniques that are used in kundalini is to move energy up and down the spine, from the base of the spine to the pineal gland in the middle of the head, using the breath. So without an exhale, the energy is taken down the spine to the base of the spine, and then we contract the Muller center at the base of the spine with a Muller bandha. Bandha's a lock, so you basically tighten the muscles between at the very base at the pelvic floor, right? Not the anus, the pelvic floor, right? So that's perhaps why they said it's difficult to explain. You're going to talk about things like that. But so that's quite a difficult technique that can be mastered with instructions from a teacher. And basically what you're doing is you're using the breath. It goes down to the base of the spine, then bounces back up to the third eye, and bounces. So you're bouncing like the energy up and down the spine using the breath. Now the breath controls what we call the prana, the body's energy, and this changes the situation in a person's spiritual body, right? So that's a technique that's out there for opening the third eye, which really, that's something you would need to learn through a proper teacher. There are some people out there that can teach it. There are also, as with so many of these things, a lot of blind alleys with that, because a lot of people, I remember meeting these guys once, going back in the 70s, and these guys all wore white suits. There was a group of people all in white suits, and they said, "Hello sir, can I teach you about kundalini yoga?" They were all Americans. Oh jeez, no thank you. It sounds terrifying. Actually, I'm wearing white, aren't I? But they were like white Elvis type suits. I thought, oh no, what's going wrong with this? It had been so misused, and it's still out there. There's a huge ego trip as soon as you mention this word kundalini, as if you're something special if you practice this sort of thing. So I'm not going to teach you those techniques today. It's much simpler than that, because the third eye will open on its own accord if we it's just a matter of where we focus our attention when we're doing our meditation. Now there is one useful thing that I find does help me keep my focus. I'm talking here quite a lot from a personal point of view, from my personal experience of these things. Okay, the books might tell you differently, but I have to tell you from my personal experience. So again, these are tips really. Now, one of the things, there's a technique in yoga where you curl your tongue and push the tongue to the top of the mouth like this. But it's not easy to speak like this. Makes you sound like Tommy Cooper. But I'm pushing the tongue onto the top, curling it over and pushing it to the top of the palate, right? The soft top of the palate, right at the back of the throat, right? As far back as you can go. That's quite difficult, and if it's uncomfortable for you, you don't practice it all the time. But I find it quite easy now because I've been doing it for so many years. But that can help stimulate the energy to the third eye. It also links to another chakra, which is at the very back of the head, or just right there, quite at the back. It's at the top of the head, where I used to have my ponytail, and there's now just another bald patch. The Bindu Center, because that's the center that they say where the nectar of eternal life drops down into the throat, where it is actually destroyed by the throat, and that's why Shiva keeps the poison here. That's a whole other story. But it's part of the system within the body that helps to stimulate the life force. Okay, so by touching the top of the palate, we're bringing into play another chakra as well as the third eye. I said I was going to make it simple, didn't I? So these are just little tips, but the main thing, let's keep it simple, right? The third eye works with light, right? So in your meditation, I would suggest you focus this way. You close your eyes and go into your meditation. You let your energy relax, let your breathing slow down, and get into that lovely peaceful state that comes by just simply sitting and being. Thoughts will come and go, all the usual things. Your mind might be scattered and so forth, but gradually, particularly if you focus on your breath for a while, and I taught some of this in some of the other things I've done on here, we let our whole emotions settle down, let our feelings settle down, let our thoughts settle down, and we take our attention to ourselves with what another modern buzzword, mindfulness, but self-observation. We just observe the thoughts coming and going, the flow of energy coming through the mind. Right. Now, when I do this, I'll often get very strong visual imagery, because I also feel that once we connect with the third eye, we start to get very powerful visual imagery coming up. So, in my case, thoughts, ordinary day, everyday thoughts and feelings start to turn into pictures, and I start seeing pictures and images which you remember on my other video, I set my attention on and then I let them dissolve, set my attention on, let them dissolve. But if you start, I find that I step into that stage first, where I'm seeing a flow of visual imagery, like hypnagogic dreaming, like high energy dreaming almost, but fully awake all the time. And I let that dissolve, and as soon as those images and thoughts dissolve, I notice what remains is sort of light. But I find in my case, I find that light comes from two sides. It's as if two sides of the brain are sort of just two light sources that seem to be gently almost massaging the brain, coming from one side and the other. They're just like they're multicoloured, they're full of brilliant imagery sometimes, and they're full of colours sometimes, and they're just gentle glowing lights that pulsate and turn and flow, and they're full of beautiful energy and patterns and all sorts of and it's a lovely feeling when I feel that happen. Now, actually it's explained in a book called there it is. I just comes to mind, I remember where the book is. This isn't one of mine, of course. This is The Secret of the Golden Flower, with the preface by Carl Jung. Some of those techniques are explained in The Secret of the Golden Flower for those that are interested in looking up any further. Fantastically interesting, quite hard to understand book at times. So you get this flow of light. You get this flow of light coming from either side, right? And you'll see it in your closed eyes, but then you bring that light to the middle. Right, you bring the light to the middle and keep the light to focus in the middle. So the light no longer is coming from either side, but starts to come from the middle. Right. I find that once you've done that, that is when the energy in the system is focused on the third eye. So we just keep on that focus of that light. And what happens in my case, and I think would happen to your case, is that light turns into a brilliant purple light. It's just an incredible, brilliant purple light. Now, I know other mediums that have had the same experience. I know my wife Jane, she has the same thing. She's got to find her purple light, she says, before she can do her mediumistic link. And others talk about that. Yogananda talks about it too, that there's a purple light effect like that. And often a part crescent, upside down crescent, sometimes he talks about people seeing. And it's connected with the mantra Om too, so that Om it connects with that chakra too. So when you get into that point where you're at one with that light, there's a very strong sense of restfulness, of peace, of being who you really are. And that's where I begin my meditation, really. Now, from that point, if I'm working mediumistically and I'm going to do mediumistic work, that's where I would make my connection with the spirit world. That same place, as it were, is where I would communicate with my spirit guides and helpers. Now, I would get told off saying that if I was teaching that to a group of yogis, because they say you've got to avoid all that sort of thing. Patanjali says you mustn't, but that's not the case. Not in my opinion. That's a long story. But we can connect with the higher realms there. We can connect with the heavenly planes. We can, in that purple light, connect with our teachers too. This is where, if I want to ask any of my spirit guides, but more than that, even my guides in this world, my gurus and things like that, and the people I've met, and those Siddha yogis I've talked about, Sharavana Baba, who I've talked about before, even Sai Baba, all of that can be found by sitting in that space. That is our spiritual place. We're centered. right? So this is why you do it and why it's important. And it's from there also that we can then go into the deeper states of meditation. Now, I've spoken in other meditations that, you know, I always feel the way to really meditate is to meditate on the absolute, meditate on Brahma, meditate on the formlessness of God, the infinite love of God, the infinite peace of it, the infinite wonder of it, the ever new freshness of existence, the infinite unbounded consciousness that takes us beyond our normal sense of I into something far bigger, right? And that can come through that focus on the third eye. So I'm just saying that the technique is simple. To look for the inner light. Don't do it in a bright room, because that will confuse you. If you're doing it in a bright room looking at sunlight, you're going to see the natural reflection of the light on the back of the eyes. Do it in a subdued light room, maybe with candles, maybe not looking directly at them, and you will naturally start to see these lights that I've talked about, multicoloured at first, coming from your left and your right. And then let them just come to the centre and hold the light in the centre and let it emerge from the centre. You may see it sometimes as like mandalas of light appearing, but you'll also, when you get closer and closer to it, you realise that it's not something in front of you, it's something that you are that light evolving like that. Okay I don't know if I've made that simple or too complicated, but really, like I say, I'm trying to talk from my own personal experience here, you know, and this is how I encounter it. This is how I understand the third eye to work, and I find it a very beautiful and peaceful experience. I've spent my whole life meditating in one form or another. I got interested in yoga at the age of 14. I got interested in becoming a spiritualist medium in my early 20s, and all of that, you know, taken together means that I have done a lot of practice like this. Hopefully not all misguided, but it is what I would suggest to you is a way in to understanding and knowing the third eye. So I hope you find that helpful. I'll do some more on this actually later on, and maybe sort of hone down a few other techniques that you can use to help you with this type of practice. But let it happen naturally. We're not trying to force open the third eye, just like we're not trying to force open the kundalini spirit at the base of the spine to hit through the top of the head like an electric charge. It will all open on its own accord naturally when you're ready and in your right spiritual state. And as usual, I will always put an advert here at the end. So check it out in my book, Psychic School. Now, that's not so much on the yogic side of things, but it will give you an idea about some of these things that I've talked about, and give you some ideas of the type of meditations you can use to help you. There's a meditation in there particularly that you can also find on this YouTube channel, in which I teach you how to go through the chakras one at a time and let the third eye open. So look out for that one as well. I'll put it at the end of this video as the coming up next video for you. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you find it interesting. Can't get my voice. So keep coming to this channel. Don't forget, subscribe, and if you click the little bell, that will also help you to get notifications. And please tell your friends, you know, because it's nice if you share these videos. We can get the message out to more people. And yeah, so keep coming back, and look forward to seeing you again. So bye for now. My book, Psychic School, will show you how to become a psychic or a medium. Over the years, I have demonstrated mediumship, confounded skeptics with the accuracy of my readings, and taught students how to unlock their latent psychic powers. For BBC Television, my real-world Psychic School classes were filmed over a year and made into a major 3-part documentary. Now I show you how to recognise and harness your own psychic powers. In fact, these forces may already be at work in your own life through gut feelings, dreams and perceptions. All you need to do is understand how to recognise and channel your abilities. I will show you how to set up a circle that can take you from fledgling psychic to professional medium. Learn about clairvoyance, meditation, spirit guides, aura reading, inspirational speaking, psychic mediumship, and other age-old techniques. Open up to the spirituality within you and learn the rewards that can follow. Psychic School is available from Amazon or my website at psychics.co.uk.